You're lying on your deathbed dying, and you come to realize that you never became who you really were. Imagine being a good person your whole life, but always being told that you're nothing but a worthless burden. Imagine feeling so stuck in your toxic family, stressful job, or mental health problems that you can never experience a happy life. Well, Franz Kafka didn't have to imagine it at all. This just was his existence. He endured a childhood of abuse and an adulthood of loneliness. Kafka's stories are written with pain and passion. They weren't meant to be popular or to make any money. In fact, some of his last words on his deathbed were to burn it all, referring to all of his manuscripts. For better or worse, his only friend, Max Brod, decided to betray this wish and get these stories out into the world. Whether Kafka would have been okay with this, we will never know. But his stories might be just what we need to help us cope with a world that doesn't seem to care about anything except money, fame, and social media. So, in this video, we explore the dark world of Franz Kafka. Before we jump in, I just want to remind you guys to like, comment, and subscribe if you do enjoy the content on this channel. Leaving your thoughts down below in the comments not only helps with the algorithm, but it helps us decide on which people and topics we're going to pursue. Because at the end of the day, we want to make content that's actually going to be interesting and help you guys if it can. Any help you can give us means the world. And thanks again to everybody who continues to watch our videos. Kafka's obsession with these social power dynamics began with his troubled childhood. Kafka often reflected on these events, noting how, when he was very young, he asked his father for a glass of water and was then thrown out onto a balcony and locked in the rain for several hours. This was the type of erratic and violent reaction Kafka could expect from his father, and would never ever receive any kind of explanation for why it happened. There was one moment later in life when he may have been able to get some closure and perhaps even heal. He wrote a letter to his father where he detailed these events about his feelings. But his mother wouldn't even show him, fearing that it would just make his father mad. This disregard for Kafka, seeing him as a nuisance for simply having his own feelings and problems, will foreshadow his later work that we're going to cover in this video, The Metamorphosis. As an adult, Kafka was forced to work as an insurance clerk, having to do all of his writing in the evenings and in secret, as his father would never have permitted such a feminine enterprise. Kafka died in 1924 at the age of 40 from complications related to tuberculosis. He never reconciled with his family, and no one except Max Braun ever acknowledged what he was truly even capable of. His overbearing and abusive father laid the early seeds for his views on authority, and when he directed his mind towards this, he produced incredible works like The Trial, The Castle, and America, among a lot of short stories. Franz Kafka had a piercing intellect, a mind that just cut right through the fragile illusions of power and social norms that dominate our lives. From a young age, he was consumed by feelings of inadequacy and self-hatred. He felt as though he was a puzzle piece that wasn't meant for this world, a lone piece trying desperately to understand its place, but, in the end, never really finding it. Modern life is distinct from our history in this very way. We're given all of these beliefs and values, told who and what we are, and that the society we have has a role for us to just slide right into. But these artificially constructed roles only serve those who are like the people that created them in the first place. Everybody else is condemned to a life where they either have to just never hack it or deal with the mental health consequences of feeling like there's something wrong with them. Kafka's work speaks to this tension in modern life and is a lesson for not just the people struggling to find their way, but those who have found their way rather easily, because it's on them not to make others feel isolated and alone and cut them off from their chance to do so. Kafka takes us to a bleak place. He takes us to the heart of the existential problem. But unlike others such as Kierkegaard and Nietzsche, who offer more on how to navigate their way out, Kafka looks at what it's like to just completely fail, to have given this life your all, picked yourself up again and again, when life knocked you down without any explanation, but for this, in the end, to amount to nothing. The nature and feeling of his writing has even given birth to the name Kafkaesque. But this is the very dark world we need to explore if we are to understand why it can actually help us. Even in this dark underbelly of life, there is a fire within Kafka. He wants so desperately just to have the chance to express himself, to find people that want what he has to give. Unfortunately, he never quite got this chance in his life. And this may be the biggest message here for anyone looking to make their own way. Anyone looking to walk away from toxic family members or partners, to move out of their hometown, pursue a career, or just a lifestyle that they're too afraid to. If we cannot recognize and admit the Kafkaesque, what makes us afraid, what makes us shrink in the face of action, our life will suffer the consequences. So how can Kafka help us with this? There's two critical hurdles in Kafka's world: authority and self-hatred. Let's look at two of his short stories, Before the Law and The Metamorphosis. In Kafka's world, the law can be likened to the institutions that dominate our world, but at the end of the day, remain out of reach for many of us, such as lawmakers or even social circles we want to accept us. A doorkeeper guarding entrance to the law. A man shows up and asks to be admitted, to gain access to the law. But the doorkeeper denies him. The man asks if he can maybe be admitted later. The doorkeeper says maybe, but for now, he must wait. The door to the law is open, and the man tries to peer through around the doorkeeper, but the doorkeeper challenges him to try and look through. He warns him that if the man tries to get past him, he's powerful and will stop him, and that there are other, more powerful doorkeepers beyond him. The man ends up sitting there for years, continually pleading with the doorkeeper to let him in. The man even tries to bribe him, and although he accepts the man's bribes, he still doesn't let the man through the door, telling him that he's only taken the bribes so that the man doesn't think he hasn't tried everything to get in. It's as if the man still believes in the system, even though it is determined to keep him in his place. This might sound familiar to a lot of you. As the years go by, his eyes start to fail, he withers, diminishes, and eventually he dies, having never been accepted into the place he was told was made for him, the institutions and rules meant to serve him, failing to see that these are not set up for him, but meant to keep those already in from having to live the way we do. What we see here is a depiction of the authority that governs our lives. Both institutions and society claim they have what we need to find our way, but they're fixed paths. They're not made for us at all. When we spend our lives like the man trying to gain entry to the law, trying to gain entry to a professional or social sphere that doesn't really represent who we are and is controlled by people that don't care about us at all, we grow old and die having sadly missed out on the chance to express ourselves. Part of what is shown here is the social rules embedded in our society are synthetic creations. They're products designed, produced, and packaged by a person or persons who wanted the world to be a certain way. And then we have to feel the shame of not fitting into it and can spend our entire lives failing to understand that we too could make our own rules to some extent. This leads us to the Metamorphosis, where we will see the second important part of Kafka's world, self-hatred. The Metamorphosis opens with traveling salesman Gregor Samsa. Gregor wakes up in his bed to discover that he's been transformed into some kind of giant cockroach. Despite this being a shocking turn of events, he's more worried about the fact that he's overslept and has now missed a train he needed to catch for work. He worries about his family, their finances, and his responsibility to both. Gregor spends the next moments struggling to get rolled over and out of bed without hurting himself. As he's trying to just figure out how his new body works, he hears his family talking about the trouble they're going to have financially now that Gregor can't work. As the family tries to work around Gregor, they all eventually grow tired of the burden and simply start ignoring him. It is at this point that they then invite 3 other people to move into the apartment just to get a little bit of extra money. Gregor can hear them with the family outside of his room, and he's drawn closer to the music his sister is playing, so he crawls out to try and join them. But when all of them see him, They leave disgusted, and his family is furious at him. Gregor, deflated once more, returns to his room, considers how his life is more of a burden on his family than anything else, and simply dies. Afterward, the family experiences mostly just relief that the burden of their son/brother has been lifted, and they quickly move on to what's next. It's as if the fact that their family member was transformed into a bug is less important than what he can give them financially. At the root of this story is the self-disgust that develops when one cannot live up to the expectation of those they aim to please. Gregor's shortcomings are in no way his fault, yet his family comes to blame him all the same. The root cause of his problems is never addressed, and instead he remains fixated on trying to be less of a burden. His family is a mystery to him, and he is going through something of a crisis, but no one seems to care if he can't provide for them. Gregor never comes to question whether he should reconsider his relationship with his family, given that they don't care about him. Because he stays within the social rules, he finds himself condemned to die, feeling only shame and guilt, even though he has done nothing wrong. If we are to have the confidence to walk past the doorkeeper or question our social fears, we must first get past ourselves. This starts with what scares and haunts us most: family, social anxiety, fear of failure. Whatever Kafkaesque fear you have, whatever makes you want to shrink and flee the scene, is the key to breaking from this. If we know what makes us sad, scared, and afraid, we know exactly where to look to make our lives better. We all want to be happy. We all want to be rid of anxiety and have more confidence. But we can't shrink from the world, no matter how poorly that world seems to treat us sometimes. So it's here that I want to leave you with a few questions to ask yourself. Do you let toxic people control you? What are you most afraid of when it comes to how your life will end up? And if you could change anything about your life, what would it be? Feel free to share your answers and thoughts in the comments below if you're comfortable doing so. And as always, thank you for watching.